Welcome back to the Tommy Brideson Show. Now, today I wanted to talk specifically about calorie deficits and how you can drop some body fat so you can improve on your body composition and get back to the fun stuff, training. Now, that's a little pun intended, but the reality is when most people come into the gym, you come in wanting to improve on your body composition, you want to drop some body fat, and then, as you go through your training journey, you might find the love for strength training. You might find the love for building muscle mass and your priorities might shift. But the reality is you're probably going to start off in a similar situation to a lot of other people where you want to feel good in your skin, you want to drop some body fat, and you want to feel healthier. You want to feel better. So let's talk about dropping body fat, how to approach it, some really simple considerations about how to get started. There's a lot of nuances that we can go into. There's a lot of information out there, but I wanted to just provide a little framework because the reality is when you're dropping body fat, it's not a state that you want to live in forever. It's a period of time. You want to get in, get the job done, and move on. Now, as you progress through your training journey, what often happens is, you become really focused on the outcome. You start to build strength. You start to build muscle mass, and the desire for dropping body fat kind of just withers away. Now, if you can get yourself to the point where you feel really comfortable in the skin, you can then just incorporate training into your lifestyle, into part of what you do. You're going to feel great, you're going to perform well, and your overall life and your quality of life is going to be better. So let's provide a little bit of a framework around how to essentially get yourself into a calorie deficit so you can drop some weight, and then a couple of key considerations. Now, the first thing when you're thinking about dropping weight is you need to first establish what your maintenance calories are. Like what you need to eat every single day in order to maintain the current weight that you're on, that you're at. So say that's 80 kilos. So for me to stay at 80 kilos, how many calories do I need to eat every single day or across an average across a week in order to maintain 80 kilos? Now, there's a few different ways that you can do it. So there's a lot of accessible predictive equations in the internet that you can use. How I prefer to do it is look at your body weight, preferably done through a DEXA scan, and look at your fat-free mass. So it looks at your tissue, how much muscle mass you have, how much bone you have, and then allocate a certain amount of calories to each kilo of body weight that you have. Now, if you don't have access to a DEXA scan, for instance, you could even just jump on a set of scales and then allocate calories based off your actual total body weight and then go up and down as needed. So how this would look in real life, if someone came in, say for instance, they had 60 kilos of lean tissue and bone and organ weight all combined together. Now I want to fuel that 60 kilos. So what I would do is I would allocate probably around 30 calories per kilo of fat-free mass to that person. So I would allocate a certain amount of calories, and if their weight fluctuated up, I would then, after say about a 2-week period, bring the calories down based on what we're seeing. Or if their weight plummeted and dropped down, you would bring the calories back up until we found that maintenance point. So the first step of any weight loss journey is literally finding out how many calories you need to eat every single day in order to maintain the current weight you're on, the current weight you're at. Because then what ends up happening is you can then slowly decrease over time the amount of calories that you're eating so that you push yourself into a state of a calorie deficit. Once you start to move into an actual state of a calorie deficit, you will start to lose the body weight that you desire. And then our goal is to essentially get there as quick as possible, also whilst trying to build some muscle mass and trying to stay strong throughout that process. So the first step of it is finding maintenance. Now, I was talking a little bit before about the DEXA scan and sort of how you find it. Now, there's 3 big windows that you can look at here. So level 1 is less than 30 calories per kilo of fat-free mass is essentially in a deficit. Between 30 and 40 calories per kilo of fat-free mass is essentially maintenance. And then above that is actually going into a surplus. Now, there's obviously going to be individual variation and fluctuations with that, but you can use that as a ballpark guide to assist you when you're first starting out. Now, obviously, you're using scales as a measurement tool. So you can use scales and you can just adjust and look at what's happening with your weight over a period of a week week and adjust your calories as needed. Once you've found maintenance, it's very easy to manipulate. So you have to find ground zero before you can make any changes up or down. So it's the first step of going into a calorie deficit. And that's what I would aim for. I wouldn't jump straight into a deficit. I would just look at trying to find maintenance and then manipulate it from there. Now, the second thing that we want to look at is making sure that you're eating enough protein in order to maintain your current level of muscle mass. And if you're new in the gym, you'll actually find that you'll probably build muscle mass through this period of time as well. Now, anyone that has been training for a period of time understands how hard it is to build muscle mass. You don't look at weights and just grow. It takes a considerable amount of effort, sets, reps, and time, and eating in order to actually grow muscle mass. So as you're starting to drop weight, you just do not want to risk losing all that tissue that you have built throughout the years of training or just built through life. So you want to make sure that we have that at the forefront of what we're doing. So what we need to do is make sure that we're eating adequate protein throughout our days. Now, protein is the most vital macronutrient that we have to eat when we're in a deficit, because as we go into a deficit, the use of protein becomes less and less. Our body absorbs it less and it doesn't allow us to use it to build muscle mass. So we have to increase the amount of protein that we're having on a daily over a week period so that we can continue to maintain or build on that muscle mass. So it's really important. Now, a benchmark number that you can start at is 2 grams per kilo of fat-free mass. Now, I personally would actually sit a little bit higher. I would sit up around 2.5 grams per kilo of fat-free mass, but there's actually a lot of literature to support going even higher. So 2.5 is probably a really good point to, aim for, and then you can adjust as need be. So looking at macronutrients, the remainder of the food that you eat, there's obviously a lot of nuances around it. But what I would focus on, and the first point that I would focus on if I was jumping into a weight loss journey, is protein. So I'd look at finding maintenance and then taking myself into a deficit. I would then look at really optimizing my protein intake so that I can maintain or build muscle mass. And that are 2 really strong linchpins that you can use in your weight loss journey. Now, the third component is looking at your training modalities. How can we use training to stimulate the changes that you want in your body and help further push you into a calorie deficit? These are just tools that we use in order to get you to a goal. So when we look at resistance training, it's the most potent stimulus that we have for growing muscle. We really want to stimulate your tissue in order to preserve it or grow it. So resistance training needs to be at the forefront of what you do in your training week. And I would look at doing at least 4 resistance-based training sessions a week whilst you're moving into a deficit. Now, obviously, we can look at training from a few different lenses as well. So you could look at training and go, okay, well, my energy is going to be a little bit lower. So maybe I could distribute the load across my whole body. So I could do 4 full body training sessions a week. I could start to push higher reps so that it helps with my output every session. So those sessions accumulatively across the week means that my output's going to be higher and higher and higher. So there's different ways that we can tweak resistance training, but however you look at it, you need to have it at the forefront of what you do. Some people would prefer just to have an upper and lower split. Some people would prefer to do a full body. At the end of the day, all we need to be doing is stimulating your tissue so that you can preserve the tissue you have or build it. It's really, really important. So we can use resistance training as that main modality. And then on your off training days or your off resistance training days, use some sort of cardiovascular training to continue to increase your output across a week. Now, say for instance, I jumped on a bike erg. Very low impact, doesn't cost me a lot of energy in terms of like mental energy. I get on a bike, I spin my legs for 40, 60 minutes, and there might be anywhere between 400 and 600 calories of output, maybe more if you're quite advanced. But the reality is, on your off training days, you want to continue to burn calories because the calories that we burn during training cannot be used for anything else. So if you are on a weight loss journey, you almost need to look at it from a lens of you want to be doing something every day, nothing drastic. You just want to be consistent across your training week. Because if you had a 500 calorie output from weights 4 days a week, and then from cardiovascular training 3 days a week, not only are you actually going to be building a really solid foundation, like a really solid base to work with moving forward, you're going to be improving on muscle mass, you're going to be improving on composition, you're also going to be improving just on your aerobic fitness and overall health. So then when you move into, say, building muscle mass, or then you move into building more strength and focusing on a different area, you've built this foundation, which then you can layer things above. So the way I like to look at going into a deficit, it's not even just about the weight loss. We're actually looking at how do we create a platform or a base that you can then work off. Because that's quite an important thing, is it's just a point in time, and the better base you build, the more you can express things later on, or the more you can go down different ways. Now, if we look at just hypertrophy for 2 secs, most people struggle with hypertrophy is they gas. They feel really exhausted. They feel nauseous. Now, if you have a better aerobic base and you're used to doing higher reps with resistance training, you're going to be able to have a bigger output in general. So instead of just looking at your deficit as a deficit, look at it as an opportunity to build a base that then you can work from. It's how I would look at it. It's pragmatic, it's logical, and then it doesn't feel so restrictive. It feels like it's part of the training process. Now, probably some of the considerations around weight loss isn't linear. It does come in ebbs and flows. And what you'll often find is when you are on a weight loss journey is, say you drop down a kilo, you might then just simmer for the next 2 weeks at a maintenance weight, and then you'll have another run, and you'll simmer again, and you'll have another run down. So it will kind of go like in a downward trajectory, but it will go in ebbs and flows. It won't just go in a straight line, and it won't sort of dip and then, a day dip again and another day dip. It will kind of come in a run, sit for a little bit, run again, sit for a bit, and that's okay. If you are in a deficit and you don't see the weight move down in like 2 or 3 days, it's not alarming. It doesn't mean that you have to run and change your calories or anything like that. Sit with it for a little bit, because it will come in ebbs and flows. Now, the other thing that I think is just important to discuss is, being in a deficit, you're going to be hungry. Like, the reality is we're restricting calories, we're increasing output. You're going to have periods where you're really, really hungry. Now, as someone that likes food a lot, as we all probably do, you want to then help yourself out as much as you possibly can. So really what it comes down to is planning out what your days look like in terms of food. The more you can prep your food at home, and the more you can pre-plan your food, the more food you're essentially going to be able to eat, because you know exactly what you're eating, you know exactly what you're preparing, what the portion sizes are. And what that means is across the day, you're going to be able to eat the maximum amount of food. Now, we always look at going into a calorie deficit. If you eat out, you almost have to put a tax on it, because you don't really know the exact makeup of what's in there. So you might need to add a 15 or 20% tax to the food based off a calculated guesstimate. So it makes more sense to be controlling a lot of the variables so that you can eat more food. That's pretty common sense, right? But the reality is you only want to restrict as much calories as you have to lose weight. There's no point going from 0 to 100. You want to just do it, a nice smooth trajectory down, whilst maximizing the amount of food, but also whilst maximizing getting you towards your goal. So I think that's something that's kind of, it's a variable that we can control very, very easily. And it's something that has a profound impact. Like if you compare something that's really dense in calories versus something that's quite light in calories but has more volume, when you're hungry, you essentially want to eat more volume. You want to eat more food. So if you have something that is, less in calories but more volume, you're probably going to feel more satisfied from that particular meal in itself. Now, with the weight loss journey, if you have a lot of weight to lose, or you have, if say you have a bigger journey to go on, you've got to understand that you might not get to that point straight away. So one run of a weight loss, like 12 to 16 weeks, you might not get to that particular goal straight away. So what a logical way of looking at it is you can take yourself into a calorie deficit for a period of time, lose some weight, and then come back to maintenance for a period of time as well. Restore your health, restore your satiety. Like you're going to eat up, you're going to feel a little bit better about it. Your training's going to get a little bit of a spark, and it just breaks up the monotony of being in a deficit, and then go for another run. And you might do that a few times until you get to a point that you're happy with your composition, and then you can look at staying at maintenance for a little bit. And you might actually do the opposite, and actually start to make a run up, but making a conscious effort to build muscle mass. So if you are on a weight loss journey, it's not a one program type situation. You do it, come back to maintenance, go back down, come back up until you get to the composition that you're happy with. And that might take a bit of time, but that's okay, because really the way that you want to look at it is a way that's sustainable, and it's a way that's going to allow you to continue to train over time. You don't really want to do anything hard and fast in a sense of that, because you're probably going to burn out just as quick as you got into it. So you probably want to take a bit more of a pragmatic approach to it and go, I'm in this for the long run. I'm going to taper down. I'm going to drop down. I'm going to try and drop down 3 to 5 kilos, come back to maintenance, chill for a little bit. You might fluctuate back up a kilo or so, and then go back down for another run. Now, once you've gotten to that particular base, then your world opens up. There's so many options out there. But I would say from personal experience that most of the people I work with, when they come in, what they actually really want to feel is good in their body. They want to feel strong, and they want to build muscle mass. So once you've gotten to the composition goals, really a lot of the time, people's mindset has already shifted, and they're like, this is amazing. This is what the output that I do is great. I'm building strength. I feel great. So, I think the weight loss journey can be such an important step for a lot of people in the gym, because it gets them into the gym. It makes them feel confident. Then once they're there, it opens up an avenue of different worlds of training, whether they go down the muscle building, whether they go down hypertrophy, whether they go functional fitness. It doesn't really matter as long as they're chasing down and enjoying the training that they're doing. So really, that's all I wanted to touch on today, was just go over the different components and the 3 big components that I believe will be the most effective for you in a weight loss journey. So to wrap them up, we've got managing your calories. So first finding maintenance, and then tapering down from that particular point in time. Making sure that you're eating a really solid amount of protein every single day and across the week, aiming for anywhere between 2 and 2.5 grams per kilo of fat-free mass or body weight. Then I would really make sure that you focus on not just one modality of training, looking at really putting at the forefront resistance training to build and maintain muscle mass, and then using aerobic training, zone 2 training to continue to increase your output across the week, because we're not looking at any particular day. We're looking at the week on average, and that week into the next week, onto months, and that the cumulative effort of you going into a deficit over time is the thing that's going to be the most impactful for you making progress. And that's it for me today, and I'll see you guys in the next episode.